Welcome to the Flowering Daydream podcast, where daydreams become reality. I'm your host, Charlene Windist, and today we are going to talk about inspiration. And to kick that off, I want to talk about the name of this podcast for just a moment. When deciding what the name would be of this podcast, I knew it would signify all that I would offer here, and it had to be just right because it holds a loving container and space for the conversations that we have here. So when I went with Flowering Daydream, I envisioned dreams blossoming and a space where daydreams can come to life. And when I added the tagline, where daydreams become reality, it just sort of did a double down on that thought and that feeling. So if we set the container that we want and we set the space for what we want, it helps to hold that energy line, to bring it forward in all that you do pertaining to the container that you're holding simply by a title of your podcast, which is just one example. So recognizing that there is power and support in how you create space for yourself to be held in your life or in the work that you do, and to not bypass the simplicity of something and to notice the support that can be held for you when you have a meaningful and focused intention behind what you're doing, and choosing something to symbolize inspiration for you. And the Flowering Daydream podcast, where daydreams become reality, is exactly that for me and for this podcast. Inspiration is contagious. It's a beautiful, healing energy, and it's available to all of us all day long, everywhere, between each other. I saw a video from Grandma Great. She's on the internet and at Grandma Great, and she's so inspiring, and I just love all of her shares. And she posted a video, or I saw a video today that she said that she was feeling really sad and really down about all the world events, and she woke up and the sun was shining through her window and it kind of uplifted her a little bit. And she left her house to run some errands. And on every corner, she had an inspiring and an uplifting moment. A little boy asked her how she was doing. Someone opened the door for her that was older than her. She had somebody that was extra kind to her at the grocery store. And she said she just continued to feel uplifted throughout the day. And I share that with you because you have the power to lift others, to elevate vibrations and frequencies, and to make changes in the non-physical that become physical simply by how you behave, by your actions and how you move in this world. You can make a difference in the collective with the choices that you make each day and how you show up. One person can make a significant change for another person without even realizing it. And this is incredibly healing and beneficial for us all to recognize and to work collaboratively with this energy. So you can find that video I was just talking about on TikTok at Grandma Great. And she's everyone's grandma on the internet. I just love her. She's amazing. So today on the show, I am excited to share with you some inspiration by having Lisa Thompson on the show. I've known Lisa for many years, and she continues to inspire me as she moves through life. She went through breast cancer and multiple surgeries and a divorce, and all the while continued to climb some of the most challenging mountains in the world. Her story shows us that we can continue to show up, that we can continue to break barriers, we can continue to pursue our dreams, even when things get so hard and challenging. And while doing all of that, inspire and shift the world in and around us. Lisa's perseverance has paved the way for more women in her field to show up and has allowed her to support more women by starting a nonprofit for women, which we'll talk about today in the interview. It's important that we seek and find inspiration when we need it and look for it and find a way to allow that inspiration to carry you to the next moment, to your next daydream, and to bring your inspiration to life, and know that your life shifts the lives of others and is powerful and meaningful. And you have the power to inspire and make change and bring healing to yourself and others in more ways than you may ever fully know. I welcome today on the show Lisa Thompson, who is an author, speaker, and mountaineer. You can find Lisa in the Emmy-nominated immersive virtual reality documentary Capturing Everest that debuted May 2017. And mark your calendars to find her first published book releasing January 10th, 2023, titled Finding Elevation, Fear and Courage on the World's Most Dangerous Mountain. Lisa is the second American woman ever to summit K2, and she shares her compelling and incredible story of climbing this mountain in her book. Lisa travels the world to speak on motivation, overcoming obstacles, and helping others discover their potential. She also coaches mountaineers of all levels to climb peaks around the world. And along with two mountaineering friends, Lisa started a nonprofit to benefit women in Nepal. 48% of Nepalese women over the age of 15 have not received any education. So we will talk about this today, and we will put information in the show notes if you'd like to support. So Lisa, we've known each other for over a decade now, and you just continue to inspire me with your dedication and motivation and endurance in life. So thank you so much for being a part of this podcast and coming here today to talk about your journey and your book with us.
Thanks for having me, Charlene. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Well, I asked you to come on the show, one, because your story is really incredibly inspiring, and especially for women. But your book is really going to highlight and share this beautiful energy with the world. And I had the pleasure of reading your book, and I was completely pulled into the story. And I felt like I was there with you. It was so well written. So let's just start with how a girl from Illinois, where all of her explorations were sea level, wakes up one day and just decides, I'm going to go climb mountains.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, does it? I definitely didn't grow up reading about or curious about the mountains or pioneering mountaineers like Sir Edmund Hillary or Tenzing Norgay. I wasn't even really athletic when I was a kid. Like, I didn't make the junior high volleyball team, for example. So I was not like those kids that was like super athletic. I was really into the outdoors. Even as a young age, I just found peace and calm and inspiration there. In the yard of my childhood home, there was a huge pine tree, and I remember climbing up it and sitting with my back against the trunk, and sort of like there's these branches were just like sort of perfect, made a perfect chair for my little legs. And just dreaming there, like sitting there and just imagining my life at a very young age. So I've always had that inspiration from nature. And when I moved to Seattle from the Midwest in 2015 for work, and at that job, I was the only woman at my level. And all of the guys, my cohort, would go climbing on the weekends. And I had no idea what that meant. I just, got off the plane from Illinois. I had no idea about mountain climbing or what that was all about. But I was really envious of the camaraderie that I saw in them when they came back to the office on Monday mornings. And it wasn't that I wanted to go climbing. It was that I wanted them to see me as capable. I wanted them to see me as, part of their group. And I thought that if I could join their adventures on the weekends, that would be a way for that to happen. And instead of doing like the totally logical thing, which would be to walk up to one of them and be like, hey, this sounds really cool. Can I come with you the next time? Instead of that, I just got really frustrated and spiteful. And I just decided I would climb my own damn mountains. And again, 100% clueless, no idea what that was about. But we're fortunate in the Pacific Northwest to be surrounded by lots of mountains. And so I just started hiking on the weekends and got, more comfortable, and eventually attempted Mount Rainier in 2008.
Wow.
So the short answer is spite. That's what got me into climbing.
So all of our feelings and emotions can lead to good things.
They can. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure. But yeah, there's, I think in so many things in life, there's a, sort of a flip side. There's a positive or a light side and a dark side. And I was really frustrated and, about that situation, but it led me to find something that's been so meaningful to me in my life. and something that I draw so much inspiration from.
Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. Hey, whatever motivates you to pursue those dreams.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, so you talk about in the prologue of your book that you just had a knowing that you were going to climb K2. Can you share about this knowing and how you knew it was just real and definitive? Because I talk a little bit in some of my classes and on the podcast about like our intuition and our inner senses. And one of those senses is that just that knowing, that deep knowing that we have. And you just clearly outlined what that was in the prologue of your book. But can you explain what that was like for you to experience that and how you knew it was just going to happen?
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, it's so hard to put it to words because it's a feeling. It's something that's resident inside of you. And I remember, and the scene that I describe in the prologue is of me hiking a mountain in Seattle or near Seattle called Mailbox Peak. So it's very well known. Lots of people go there for training, and I've done it, I don't know, probably 1,000 times. And there was something that day about me and the mountain and being in that space, and this idea of K2 just sort of popped into my head. And I just it just felt comfortable there. It just felt like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And I didn't have a spiritual practice then. I really was not in tune. You know, I have a lot of work still to do in that arena, but I really wasn't that in tune with my senses or my body at that point in my life, I don't think. But I just had a very strong sense and confidence that I would do it. And that was tested. I mean, probably some of the biggest tests I've experienced, emotional tests in my life, were related to that decision. So I had, for many years worked with a very well-known mountaineering coach who I, at that point, felt like, he was sort of my secret sauce to success in the mountains. He had helped me train through cancer and other injuries and surgeries. And I had, been fortunate to have a lot of success in the mountains and really relied on him a lot. And he felt like K2 was too big of a stretch for me, that my ego was getting the best of me, and he ended our coaching relationship. And I mean, that was just, devastating was not the right word. And all those feelings of shame that I had in my childhood just sort of, just came crashing down. I'd made this big mistake and lost the respect of someone that I really looked up to. And that tested that little voice, that little flicker of confidence inside of me so much. And I'm a very analytical person, and I talk to other people. I'm like, do you think he's right? Should I do? And I should have just gone inside and trusted myself and that feeling and that intuition. And today I think I probably would handle it differently. But in that moment, I was really looking still for external validation of please tell me I'm right. Please, I wanted someone in the mountaineering community to tell me I should do it. And I found some female friends who said, I support you. But for the most part, the answer was, I think you're in over your head. And that was it, just in direct opposition to what I felt inside me. And those people couldn't see that feeling, that, they couldn't sense it the way that I could. And thank God I listened to it.
Wow. That's so powerful when you have all the external environment saying no, but your inside say yes. And you did it. You held on to that.
And I think that happens to all of us, right? It doesn't matter if it's about climbing a mountain or taking a job or having another child, it's that knowing that we all have it. I mean, you, Charlene, have taught me that more than anybody. We all have it, and it gets shut down or quieted or overlooked so much of the time. And I do not get this right every day. I don't at all. I'm so much more in tune and so much more likely to pay attention to it today than I was, back then in 2017 and 18.
Yeah. Well, we're really happy you did.
So am I.
Well, Well, you've already kind of talked about the tree in your childhood, but in the book, I love the part where you share your interaction with some trees and you talk about a moment where you were having a difficult conversation with your ex-husband now, and you looked around at the trees nearby and you said you wondered how much they had witnessed or stored in the memories of their tree trunks. And in that moment, as the reader, it seemed like the trees were just bringing you so much comfort. And can you talk
Oh,
about that moment and with your connection with nature a little bit more?
yeah. So I'll back up just a little bit. Cancer, I think, causes a lot of people to take inventory of their lives and reprioritize what's important to them and how they want to invest their time and who they want in their closest circles. And I did that. And for me, that meant that I needed to end an unfulfilling marriage, which was a very, very difficult decision to make. And that, sort of conversation between me and my now ex-husband occurred in a park that I had run in and trained in and walked my dogs in for decades. And it's still a very special place. I don't live very close to it anymore, but anytime I'm near there, I always make a point to go. And I just, finally said the words. It was raining, muddy. I was soaking wet, crying, as was he. And I finally said those words, I want a divorce. And I just looked up at the trees, I think for strength initially, because nature has always been a grounding part of my life. And I just remember, looking up and seeing them sort of swaying, and it just felt so supportive to me to be in that environment with those giant cedar trees, or maybe they were Douglas fir, both. I just felt very held and very supported. And I just remember thinking, like, how many things have these trees stored in their DNA over the decades that they've been there? And it's so important for me to tap into that. And I think I started to realize that in that moment when I felt just really held and supported by nature.
That's just so beautiful. Yeah, I think sometimes we realize it and sometimes we don't realize that we have support in nature that's always there. It's always consistent and it always shows up, and trees being, one of our ancestors really
Yes.
are there for that, and that we can draw that support whenever we need it. And what a beautiful, I'm just so glad that you shared that. I mean, I really felt like I was there with you. You do such a good job in your writing of explaining what happened.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was really drawn in that moment, and I could feel the trees, I could feel it too. And so when people write a book or they share something with the world, we get the opportunity to feel the same healing energy, or to have that inspiration or that moment come through and reflect onto us. So I'm just really grateful for people who share experiences like that, and especially you in this book. It was really healing for me to read the book. So thank you.
That makes me so happy, Charlene. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the mountains are clearly a healing space for you. You share in your book that you were in the middle of realizing that you wanted a divorce, and you were recovering from cancer and surgery, and you decided that you were going to climb Mount Everest in the middle of all of that happening in your life. Can you talk about how that challenged and strengthened you emotionally and mentally?
Yeah, so I wouldn't prescribe that for anybody. For me, 2016 for me, the end of 15 and most of 2016. I don't know if it was, what was going on with the planets and the stars. It was just a really tumultuous, but also beautiful time of my life. And it started for sure being diagnosed with cancer, and, letting that really allow me to take inventory of my life. And there were many moments going back to that, just, intuition, where people doubted me. And, just, I guess, to give the full story, which is detailed more in the book, but like, I was diagnosed with cancer. I decided that I wanted to end my marriage. I quit my corporate job. I sold my house. My dog died. My cat died. I lived in my car for a while. And so all of these changes, many of which I had initiated, were happening in my life. And to the outside observer, I know it looked just crazy. Like, what is this girl doing? Like, she's worked so hard for this job, and she had what looked like a perfect marriage and, perfect house and all those things. And it just didn't like somatically feel right to me anymore. Like, even just thinking back about that, I get this feeling of just tightness in my body because it wasn't me. And I'm grateful to cancer because it was the spark that caused me to have that perspective. I was not grateful to cancer when I had it, for sure. And I don't want to belittle that in any way, but I think that going back to what you said about there's light and dark in every situation, I think. And the upside for me of cancer was that it caused me to just really reflect on what was important to me. And in, the midst of all that change in 2016, I know the look on my girlfriend's faces when they're like, oh my God, like, you cannot be serious. You're going to go climb Everest. You just quit your job. You sold your house. You borrowed $50,000. You don't have a job. You barely have a house, and you're going to go climb Mount Everest. Like, what are you thinking? Which is exactly the advice I would give a girlfriend. But it just felt like I was on the right path. There's no other way for me to really describe it. It felt right to me, and I have no regrets. I don't know if I've ever regretted really listening to my voice and following my intuition. And 2016 was a year of doing that.
Wow. Here. Let's do that.
Yes.
Oh boy. Well, on I think it was page 16 in your book, you say that all of your life you tried to control everything to essentially be the best or to impress others. And while descending Mount Rainier, thousands of feet above Seattle, you said you had to surrender control and just release, and that you found so much freedom in that. And there are several parts in your book where you talk about this mental strengthening that you went through. Can you explain that moment of just releasing all of those kind of seemingly like projected ideas onto you?
Totally. Yeah. I think it started on that first Rainier climb. It happened on K2 as well. And I'm not 100% there yet. I don't think we ever get there, air quotes there. But I remember feeling like for the first time in my life, I was on Mount Rainier, I was in the midst of something bigger than me that I had no control over. And I was, the way I look at it today is I'm asking for safe passage on a mountain, and that mountain is in control of the situation. And it doesn't matter how much I've trained or how much I've paid or what sacrifices I've made. When I go climbing, I'm relinquishing all of that to the mountains, because I think of most mountains as female. So I'm going to say she is in control. And I really felt that way for the first time on Rainier. And there's also, the sort of other existential distractions that we're all used to. When you're climbing, you don't, sometimes now you do, but like you're disconnected from work, you're disconnected from your cell phone, you're not checking your email. And all of those things just get washed away, and you're left with like, it's just me and this mountain. And we, in my view, we're in this together. I don't ascribe. In fact, I really find it distasteful when people say they've conquered a mountain, because I just don't know how it is possible for a human to conquer any part of nature. I don't think that's how it works. And so for me, it's about really listening to and being in sync with the mountain and working together. And that started for me that first day on Mount Rainier.
Wow. So the mountain essentially like taught you an incredible life lesson.
So many, mountains have been my greatest teacher, and so many lessons I've learned about what I'm capable of, about finding my voice, about resilience. And I think nature can do that for anybody. We just have to be paying attention and listening.
Well, that segues right into something you shared on social media before. You shared that obstacles are not meant to prevent success, and that challenges are our greatest teachers. I love that so much. I'm like, yes, I can just scroll through your media and just be instantly inspired.
Awesome. Plus some dog pictures. I have a hard time.
But yes, plus your cute dog pics. I love those too.
I think I realized that after a very difficult moment on Mount Everest. So I climbed Everest in 2016, and I I'm a student of every mountain that I decide to take on. I study it sort of relentlessly. I take pictures of it to my bathroom mirror. I visualize myself climbing it. I study, the risks and deaths and all those things because I think they help me to be more prepared. And so on Everest, I was climbing between camps 3 and 4, and I was at about 25,000 feet. And I knew that this particular section of the route was pretty mellow compared to other places on the mountain. So it was sort of flat, and it's a section that it's all snow and ice, and it curves around to a rock section called the Yellow Band. And I had been climbing really well on Everest. I'd been moving efficiently. I felt like I was really in sync with the mountain. And all of a sudden, I just could not find the energy to move. And I remember watching a glove of someone else, and I dropped a glove and it was just like tumbling down the ice. And I was just completely enamored with watching this glove. And I wanted to just lay and take a nap. And I did not have the mental capacity to know what was going on. And luckily a teammate came up to me and said, "Hey, you're out of oxygen." And I was like, oh, I don't even know what I thought because my brain, so that means, so I had acclimatized to about 21,000 feet, and I was now at 25,000 feet. And I had been climbing with oxygen, which was the plan. And that oxygen ran out, which meant that, it just wasn't, I couldn't stay in that environment for long. And my options, I have a decision to make in that moment. And I could have turned around and gone back down to camp and, tried to find another bottle or even quit entirely. I could have just sat there and asked somebody to bring me a new bottle, or I could have kept going. And the only thing that felt right to me was just to keep going. And so that meant climbing this section of rock called the Yellow Band, which is up 30 degrees in steepness. So not exceptionally steep. It would be fun to climb at sea level, but that day at 25,000 feet without oxygen, it was probably the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life. And it really just drove home for me after the fact. I couldn't think of it in that moment, but afterwards, I realized that we are so much stronger mentally than we are physically, because I just told myself to keep an eye on the climber ahead of me and to never let him out of my sight. Like, no matter what it took, I would not let him get out of my sight. And it was 100% mental will that got me through that moment.
Wow. So then what happens? Do you get oxygen after you make
it? So it was probably a couple hours of climbing without it. And I will tell you, it is the best feeling in the world to not have oxygen. And I was, I couldn't even, I'm embarrassed by this now. I didn't have the faculty to like disconnect my bottle and reconnect to the new one. Someone else had to do it for me. And I just remember sitting in the snow and starting to breathe that oxygen. And all of a sudden your vision, which is, you lose your peripheral vision, all the colors are sort of muted. All of that just like came back to life. And I was like, I felt like Superwoman after that. I was like ready to run up the mountain.
Wow. It's almost like a rebirth.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, throughout the whole book, it's compelling like that. Like, I'm on the edge, I was on the edge of my seat when I was reading this, reading it on a plane ride. And I was just like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Is she going to get oxygen? I mean, I know you're standing here and I knew you were still alive. So I could take solace in that. But as I was reading, it was just like, so yeah, riveting the whole book. You're good at detailing experiences. Yeah. Well, so you did share a prayer and blessing experience that you had with a Buddhist man in Nepal. Would you be willing to share that with us?
Yeah, this is just surreal. So this was the first trip that I made to Nepal in 2015 to climb a mountain called Manaslu. And during the acclimatization, so we're still not quite yet to the base of the mountain, and we're sort of hiking in the villages close to the base of the mountain to, prepare our bodies to climb higher. And we're just hiking through this beautiful valley, and it's green and lush on both sides. And there's prayer flags near the end of the valley. There's prayer flags that like come down from a high point, and they're attached to this stone hut. I mean, it sounds like, like idyllic, like picture, you just lush valley, colorful prayer flags, stone hut. And as with probably 5 other people on my team. And as we got closer, we could hear just Buddhist prayer chanting coming from inside this hut. And of course, very curious, but also want to be really respectful of whatever's happening inside. And so we're with a Sherpa, and he spoke to the monk inside, and the monk was there for, I think, 2 years just to, live in this hut in the mountains and pray and be at peace. And he invited us inside, which was, just felt like this incredibly rare experience. And, you can imagine this very austere living area. It just had a sort of a mattress and a couple of sleeping bags on the floor and some books and a fire in the floor where he cooked. And the fire was sort of slowly burning. And he offered us all cheese that he had made or gotten from the villagers, yak cheese. And then he blessed every one of us, which was just like the most amazing, experience that I couldn't have even imagined that happening. And the end, we sort of namaste and thanked him and walked out. And he touched my arm and said something to me in Nepalese, which I didn't understand. And I just sort of thanked him. And, this man is like maybe my height. He has sort of easy matted brown hair, wearing, dark purple robes. And we left the hut, and I asked Ang Purba, the Sherpa who was with me, what he said. And he said, "The home for your clear heart is in the mountains." And I was just like, holy shit.
Oh, my hair is standing all over my body.
Yeah, it was just unbelievable. I don't even know. And I think in that moment, I just sort of like nodded my head because I didn't know what he said. He could have said like, "I like your t-shirt." Like, I have no idea what he said. Yeah, it was really, amazing on so many levels. Amazing that people have that sense about other humans. Like, I just completely in awe by anyone who has that sense. And then for him to share that with me was really, really special.
Wow. Yeah. What a gift. What a beautiful gift.
Yeah.
Well, you talk in your book about how you work with affirmations and then you turned those into visualizations. Can you explain this process and maybe how we might all do that for ourselves in the way that you did that for yourself?
Yeah. I think for me, it starts, this is part of my preparing to climb any mountain, is just to first understand it, take note of or recognize what's concerning to me about it, and then to visualize me overcoming those obstacles in a positive way. And those visualizations for me in the beginning, I would just do them like 5 minutes a day, just like pick something. I didn't want it to be overwhelming. If I'm worried about climbing through the Khumbu ice fall, I would watch videos and get a sense of what that was like, and then visualize myself with all my senses, like, really get it in my head, but get it in my body to what it would feel like and what it would smell like and what the temperature would be, what I would be wearing, did I have a taste in my mouth? Like all those things, I just tried to incorporate into those visualizations so that they became very real. And I think that helped eliminate some of the novelty of climbing a big mountain, because I had sort of ingested it. You don't know exactly how it's going to go, but I had internalized it ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And then I, created some mantras for when things get difficult on the mountain. I think climbing can be really meditative. For me, it has been. And it's, if I feel like things are getting hard, I can very quickly get spun up about it's hard, I suck, I shouldn't, all that whole negative narrative that just like creeps in and works its tentacles into every part of your brain and body. That can happen very quickly. And so I started just saying the words inner peace when I'm climbing. And if I'm starting to feel, just a bit out of sync or, tired or whatever it is that's not optimal, when I move my right foot, I will say the word inner, and my left foot, I will say the word peace. And I just really try to embody that. I try to let that just take over every part of my body and brain so that there's no room for anything negative to be going on in there.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a really important point that you make about when you take the visualization and the affirmation and you allow it to become a visceral, like physical response and belief in your body, it makes it real. It's almost like it draws the energy there already, and you're already having the experience even though you haven't completed the experience.
Totally.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to explain, but it's way beyond basic affirming and visualizing. It's like you're making it your reality.
Yes. And the feeling is such a big part of that, like really getting your brain and your body to have the experience of doing it and to just feel what that feels like on every level.
I love that. So feel wellness.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it applies to everything, right? Like used it, I would say kind of selfishly to climb a mountain, but I think like, you can use it, for so many things, health or abundance or, whatever
Yeah.
those things are that you aspire to have in your life.
I love that. Thank you. Well, so what happens if somebody just realizes one day that it's their dream to climb a mountain? What are the first steps that they would take, and how would you help them if they contacted you for support?
I talk to people like that every week and I love it. I love that people are just getting curious about mountaineering. And it might just be me, but I feel like it's becoming a little more mainstream. There have been some Netflix movies and I think more people are getting curious about it. And I think the first thing is to just get out there and like be in nature, like pick something that feels like a little bit of a stretch, but still in your comfort zone, and try it and be confident about it. And I think they're also in most parts of the US, at least, and in other countries too, there's lots of mountaineering clubs that I think are good to join that provide really solid training and skills and the basic things that you need to start to feel comfortable in the mountains. When I coach people, I focus a lot on the physical, just being fit enough for whatever the mountain is that you're climbing, but I also really focus on the mental aspects of climbing and mental strength, and try to share with people some of the tools that I've learned that have been helpful to me over the years. So to me, I like to be very well balanced in things, and climbing is obviously a very physical pursuit, but it is, especially at certain elevations, it's just totally a mental game.
Well, can you also talk about how did the nonprofit get started, and what is it called, and how do people find it, and what are you guys doing there?
Yeah, so this is super cool. So, there's not a lot of women in climbing. There's more now than there used to be. But along with two female mountaineering friends, we've all had great success in the mountains. We've all learned a lot from the mountains, and we've all fallen in love with the mountain communities in Nepal and in Pakistan where we've climbed. And it just really occurred to us that, as our careers, I don't want to say they're sunsetting, but like just as they, become more mature, that we give back to those places, and especially to the women in those communities, starting first with Nepal. And women are they're just the heart of those villages and those communities. So much rests on their shoulders in terms of raising the family, especially if, their partners are working in the mountains. And I was just shocked to learn, like you said in the intro, Charlene, that 48% of women in Nepal who are older than 15 have not had any kind of education, like none at all, which is just shocking to imagine. And so we want to start to change that. And the foundation is called Anything is Possible. And the website is anythingispossible.today, but you can link to it from my website, Lisa Climbs. And our ambition, this is the first year we're doing this, we hope it's not the last, is to raise funds to support the education of at least one Nepalese woman in whatever way is important to her. So if she wants to learn economics, if she wants to become a seamstress, if she wants to open a tea house, like whatever that is, we want to enable that for her, because it's not just, that has the potential, like education anywhere has the potential not just to impact that woman, but to impact generations beyond her. And so it just feels so meaningful for us to do that. And the climbing component of that is that we're putting together an all women's expedition to climb a mountain called Sholatsi, which is in Nepal. And I don't know if there's ever truly been an all female expedition. So what that means to us is that everyone on the team is a woman. So women, carrying loads, cooking, setting the route, making decisions. Are just a total badass Nepalese. Sirdar is the title for a lead Sherpa on a team. So Pasang Lamu will be our Sirdar, and she's helping us, gather all the women who will help us hopefully be successful. And we really just want to show that anything's possible when women support each other. And we want to just the pinnacle of that to be the support that we give as one woman in the form of education.
Wow, Lisa, you guys are doing amazing work.
What
healing work. So where can people find you? You just said your website, it's lisaclimbs.com.
Yep.
And on there, they can find the nonprofit. And then you're also on, what's your best social media for everyone?
Instagram is the best for me. And that's Lisa Climbs.
Great. And then if anyone wanted to get involved in the nonprofit again, could you name that website again?
Yeah. So it's anythingispossible.today. And you can link to it through my website too, Lisa Climbs.
Great. And then where will we find your book when it releases early next year?
Yeah. So it's called Finding Elevation, and it'll be published on January 10th of 2023. So early next year. And it'll be available in printed format and digitally, everywhere books are sold.
Wow.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I can't wait to see that physical copy. I had a digital copy, but I'm getting me a physical copy.
I can't wait either. It's going to be a very surreal experience to actually just hold it, have that tangible thing in my hands.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for taking time out of your schedule to be here with us today. We really appreciate you and all the gifts that you're bringing into the world.
Thanks, Charlene. I appreciate all you do too.
Thank you for listening to the Flowering Daydream podcast, where daydreams become reality. I'm your host, Charlene Windis, and you can find me at charlenewindis.com, on Udemy, and on Insight Timer.